Welcome back, everyone. How you doing? It's another episode of House of the Dragon for me to go over here on the Fantasy Network. I'm, of course, your host, Jimmy Nuts. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about with this one. I saw some people already in the chat prior talking about the thumbnail, which was the promotional poster for this episode, and how you can actually see the cat's paw dagger in the image within the dragon's eye. Very, very cool. I was able to catch that whenever they posted the picture earlier in the week, and I thought that was pretty dope. Or earlier last week, I should say. So yeah, got a lot to talk about. This was the big episode. This is the one that I was most unsure about. And I feel good about it in some ways, and in some ways not as good as previous ones. But I will say I really like this episode. I think it has some of the best moments in the season so far. And also, I think its flaws are also on display more so than maybe any of the other episodes. So we're going to go through. I'm probably not going to, touch on every single little thing that we saw. But what I will be doing is going over maybe some of the criticisms that I've seen and talk about the pacing, some of my issues, and try to address those and reframe them in a way where we start thinking about the show as an entire whole, what kind of adaptation this is, which we touched on a little bit last week, and what we have to look forward to, and what are going to be the challenges facing the creators of the show in the future. Because I think that the bigger challenges might lie with the casual viewer and not so much us, because most of you that are tuning in are pretty invested at this point. When I say casual fans, I don't mean it demeaning. I just mean a more casual viewer that maybe isn't on YouTube every day going through all of the bend the knee and alt shift X videos that they possibly can, right? So we're going to go over all that stuff, and it's really, really good to see everyone. Everyone's always excited in the chat, and I love to see it. James says, is there really anyone siding with the Greens here? It seems so obvious that Rhaenyra hasn't ever really hurt anyone or imposed her will on anyone. There are definitely some Green supporters out there, James. I have seen it. I also want to keep in mind, anybody in the chat, make sure that there are no spoilers or for anything past episode 6, even if it's included in Fire and Blood. The only Fire and Blood that we talk about here on the streams are the things that in Fire and Blood have already happened and have been changed or are the same. So no future spoilers. Jason Brubaker says, sad we won't get to see any more Harwin Rhaenyra scenes or Harwin with the kids. Totally broke my heart, that last scene. Yeah, I was very happy with Rhaenyra and Harwin's chemistry on screen. I thought it was really, really good. Even Harwin's minimal interaction with his children. I mean, we can pretend it's not his, but I think we all agree that they're Harwin's kids. Yeah, I thought there was a lot of really good chemistry. I thought that the training scene with Crispy Cole and Harwin and the boys, I thought that scene was excellent. And then whenever he says goodbye to Rhaenyra and he says, I will be a stranger when I return, which is kind of an interesting nod to the stranger, which is one of the 7 gods and the god of demise at the end of the day. So pretty interesting way for him to state his final scene. I assume that was probably a nod from Ryan Condell, and he probably wanted to see if George would notice it whenever he handed over the scripts. But it's great to see you all so very much. Super Games Bros, Matt, what's up, man? He says Aegon was ringing his bell in this episode. Something besides winter is definitely coming. Oh man. Jason Brubaker says 8 out of 10 for sure. Yeah, I'm not so big on the ratings because it's really hard to judge week to week, because like episode 1 to me was like a 10 out of 10 because it blew me away. But then I think the show reached new heights. So I like to compare it more so against itself in a lot of ways. And I'm comparing it less to Game of Thrones each week, just because there's such different shows and different adaptations, and each have their own strengths and their weaknesses for sure. So I wish they would have done 15 episodes. I wish they could have done that. And, budget is something that they have to consider. We got 10 episodes instead of 8, which I was happy about. But I do wonder when they're trying to cut the timetable for each episode, like where are they deciding to make cuts? I think we saw evidently in this episode where they decided to cut, and wasn't my favorite where they decided to pick up the pace. So Shake says this episode gets better on each rewatch. In my opinion, was a bit negative on it at first due to pacing and some skip material, but on rewatch, I realized I love 90% of it. I don't mind any of the skip material. It is what it is. You know what I mean? But for the stuff that was on screen, I thought some of it could have hung around a little bit longer. But like, I would say I also loved 90% of this episode. So I think I'm probably closer to you than I am not whenever it comes to this. DK Moon says, not even a fan of show books, just here for Jimmy Talk. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope one day you end up becoming a big Song of Ice and Fire fan. That would be excellent, wouldn't it? Yeah, the subtle acting from Rhaenyra Harwood was great. So much conveyed with just some facial expressions. Man, I just love the chat is so active tonight. This is already intense. Ryan, what's up? Ryan says, I went from liking to really disliking Kristen Cole in such a short time. Well, it's a short time for you, but it was really 10 years. Ha ha ha. Read by Kyle says Harwood was so well cast, an extremely big character in Fire and Blood that was embedded with life by the performance and writing. An extremely bit character, I'm sorry, in Fire and Blood that was embedded with life by the performance and the writing. Yeah, and you could say that about Viserys as well, right? George has already come out and said that Viserys is better than the character in his book, and that's one of the cool things about this adaptation. And I know people are going to be upset whenever things get left out or things get glossed over. But one thing you have to say is that a lot of these characters, even if they're not around for very long, the way they have come to life, because in this book back here, folks, the characters are their pieces for the most part. And I think you can feel that a little bit in the show, but the range that has been given to them in the life and the nuance, to me, is pretty extraordinary. And I think that they've done a really nice job in the writing room with these characters. I really, really do. Heir to the Monado. I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool. My girlfriend has read the book and we're watching together. She thinks for the budget the show is given, it's largely impressive. I would agree. I have no qualms about the writing at this point. Casting, clothing, set pieces, props, CGI, all that stuff. Like, I almost feel like we're taking it for granted. And that's why this is kind of fun, because we don't have to really worry about that stuff. Like, maybe there might be a blemish here and there, but like, we're good. It's HBO. It's still in Westeros. They have all the good stuff. And then we get to really dig into more of like the plot, right? We get to dig into the finer pieces of what makes this good or bad. And I think that that's pretty cool. Fantasy Fanatics says, now we know why Tommen slipped for that window. Oh my gosh. I agree with Derry. In the book, I kind of assumed Laenor wasn't aware of Harwin, so I liked how they were just kind of okay with each other. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, Jason, we're going to talk about this. He says the only nits I can pick are how one moment Lena was in bed exhausted and the next second she ran out the door. Yeah. We're going to talk about that scene because I don't agree with all the criticism, or at least I can see the direction that was taken, and I'm definitely going to go over that in detail as well. I'm also going to put up some stills on the screen. If you guys don't like it, I'll take them down, but I thought it might make this a little bit more visual for those who are not watching this live, who watch it back. So I'm going to bring up some of the stills from the episode as well. Philip says the material covered this season would have been best as 1.5 seasons, but I wonder if creators were worried that people jaded from Game of Thrones wouldn't stick around. I don't think it has anything to do with the Game of Thrones adaptation. I think it has to do with not wanting people to get too attached to the young actors, which good call, because we already have people who are super upset even after 5 episodes. And I know I heard a lot of people say they should have had them all season 1. And I can't disprove that that isn't a good way of doing things. But how many people would have taken that 1.5 years off between season 1 and 2? Think about this. Season 1 and 2, it's been like 1.5 years. A lot of people fall off when a second season comes out to a TV show. Sometimes they, it depends on how popular the show is. But you remember season 1, maybe you rewatch it. You have Millie there and everyone else. And then season 2 opens up with a whole new cast. I think you're a lot more likely to put the show down at the beginning of a new season than you are halfway through. I could be wrong. Another thing that I really wanted to talk about was in an interview, Miguel talked about how no one likes time jumps. He's like, no one goes, oh man, I loved how that time jump was executed. Or my favorite part of the show is when they jumped ahead 10 years. He's like, we knew that we were choosing to adapt it a harder way. We had a big hurdle in front of us. And he said he believes as a showrunner and a director that you should lean in to your disadvantages. And that's why at the opening scene, we get the amazing birth scene at the beginning. And it's all one shot with Rhaenyra. And he said that he felt like doing it that way was a way of introducing like all the new characters around, all the kids, right? And then all of the familiar faces with the new actors and actresses. And it was a way to kind of like set this tone for the whole episode. And I noticed that when I first watched it, like even on my first watch, I was totally sold on the way they did that. And for me, I'll be honest, I know a lot of people were talking about how jarring and everything this was. For me, I didn't feel it. And I don't know why that is. I don't think I'm being overly biased. That's just literally my personal subjective opinion. Like if I thought it was bad, I would say it, but I really just didn't mind the time jump at all. The one thing I see a lot of people upset about when it comes to the time jump is the fact that Kristen Cole's actions at the wedding were not talked about. But I think that most people have enough of an imagination to kind of fill in the blanks. And I don't know why people are so hooked. Maybe it's because it's week to week and some people haven't read it or whatever, but like people are really hooked on that. And I'm not. So maybe that was another reason why it didn't bother me. And I personally thought Emma Darcy was phenomenal, as well as Olivia Cook. So just kind of some of my thoughts, talking about season and a half and stuff. I kind of get it. And also, and I don't know if this is true, but I have read somewhere that they weren't even going to do these first 5 episodes. Like they were just going to start at the dance and kind of like let people figure out the build up on their own, right? Like they weren't going to do this we'll call it a prelude or a prologue, this whole first season. And I don't know why they weren't going to do it or whatever, but the thing I had read said that George is the one that kind of pushed for this and said, no, you have to build this up. You have to at least do a season. I think it shows that they were kind of hoping to move along. I think that that's clear. The story that they want to tell is probably starting in season 2, which I'll get to later because I want to talk about like some of the struggles that season 2 could have potentially, or the hurdles that they have to overcome. So I just want you to think about that as well. Like if this was kind of thrown, I don't want to say thrown together, but if this was like, okay, we have our scripts, well, we need this prelude, and then they added it after the fact. I think that also makes this season really, really interesting, just from like a show running perspective. But I don't know if that's confirmed or not. So don't take that as gospel. I'm going to try to get caught up on the chat here before I move on to my next soapbox point. Talk about a 180 on Kristen Cole, my favorite character in the last episode. And now I hate him. Yeah, I think a lot of people have that feeling. Oh, the Dragon Pit scene was awesome. I feel like not enough people talked about the Dragon Pit scene. I thought it was tremendous. Matt says, do you think we should have seen Massaria? I might feel really removed considering the last time we saw her was like over 10 years ago. Yeah, I feel like the next time we see her, what if we didn't see her? That would suck. That shouldn't happen. But when we do see her, I feel like it's going to be in this very big unveiling moment. Like I feel like her position will be way more obvious because we're all kind of wondering whose side she's on, right? And who's she giving information to, who's she really working for. So I think there's definitely going to be a moment when she comes back on screen. It's been 10 years and they're going to age up the actress. I assume it's going to be like, who's that? But it'll be fun for all the content creators because we get to go the things you missed in episode 8 and then a big red circle around her face. So it's a win-win, really. Right? I also want to mention this because Matt is here. Matt is one of the hosts of Bend the Knee. And if you did not see my live reaction on Bend the Knee YouTube channel, they also have a podcast that is massive for Song of Ice and Fire and obviously House of the Dragon and all Game of Thrones related shows. One of the hosts, Ezra, is taking a step back and doing some other stuff. And there was an opening, and I've done a ton of collaborations with Bend the Knee over the years. So I am now officially the other co-host along with Super Gainsborough, which is Matt, for Bend the Knee, for the podcast, for the YouTube, for it all. So if you want to hear me talk more about A Song of Ice and Fire, on the channel, I do a bunch of different books and stuff, and none of that's going to change. But now I am in addition to this, going to be on Bend the Knee as an official co-host. And I couldn't be more excited. They are the ones who motivated me to get into content creation, to start getting my opinions out there, and to really take the leap. So to be a part of that project after being a fan for so many years is really amazing. It's really, really cool, very humbling. And I'm really excited for the next era of Bend the Knee and for the podcast, the YouTube channel, and all of it. So I'm going to be talking about A Song of Ice and Fire a lot more, which is never a bad thing in my book. So Okay, so Shake says, I don't necessarily think they should have given the younger versions a whole seasons, but doing the prologue might make the second half feel too rushed. Yeah. I mean, the people love the cast of The Crown, and then we're totally on board with recasting. I think if it were transparent with the people, would roll with it. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I can't quantify that. I'm just going with my gut. That's all. And I will say, since the recasting, this because I do the live streams with Bend the Knee, like we do. I should say we now we do that over on Bend the Knee, and we do see a lot more of a casual viewer. Like I consider like the book nerds to be we're the diehards, right? But we definitely get a lot of like show only people over on Bend the Knee. And I felt like the reception to this episode was more mixed than any of the other episodes so far with the casual audience. And a lot of it was centered around the fact that people did not like the cast switch. So I don't know if that would have always just been the case. I don't know if it would have become like, a season 2 versus season 1 thing. I don't know if it ever would have worked. Which I think is what Miguel was kind of trying to get at. Like we had to rip this Band-Aid off. We decided we needed to rip it off as soon as possible, for better or for worse. Right. So I can't quantify the fact that I don't know if I'm correct when I say that maybe season 1 into 2 would have been worse. But it's just another way of looking at it. Jason Brubaker says, did you guys pick up how the kids were actually getting along in the Dragon Pit scene? If not for the parents and their quarrel, the kids would probably get along. Yeah. The kids, by the way, I thought the kid acting was tremendous. The Pink Dread is my new favorite dragon of all time. Like, saddle me up. I'm in. Yes, on the childbirth scenes, a point made on a different stream. Emma had a maester present. Lena had a maester present. Rhaenyra had 2 midwives. Very interesting. That's a nice little detail. I like that. Maybe she doesn't trust the maesters either. Kyle says, I think it's more jarring in mid-season, but that said, I don't think the time jump is bad. I just wish the episode was 2 episodes. Yeah, I do too. I think that they stuck to their template, and I don't think that they're willing to divert from it because of where they want to be. And I think that they probably have the entire thing mapped out. Much to be fair, D&D did the same thing. Like they knew the amount of hours they wanted to do. So it could be a bad thing. My boy, Chris Bookish Cauldron. My favorite says, nope, didn't find it jarring at all. Time jump was smooth as butter. That I feel like you do. And I also don't get a weird, I don't want to say weird. That's demeaning. I do not get attached to characters as much, to be honest. Like I don't know. I don't know what it is. Not characters, but actors, actresses. Like some people like really get in on one thing and they're like, I love this. And I can recognize a good performance, but I don't really care too much. I care more about the character, I guess, in the show canon than I do the actual person portraying them. That's why recasts have never truly bothered me too much. The Wheel of Time recast Matt, and he was definitely the best thing about that show. So that's going to be tough. But I think that might be one of the reasons why, just like from my subjective experience, that I don't really get attached to actors and actresses and roles. Yeah, Emma Darcy sold me with the first scene as well. I thought she did a really nice job, and I guess I'll share some of these as we go through the chat and talk, and I'll kind of let the pictures take me, if you will. I'll let them kind of guide us through. But I really, really enjoyed Laenor's actor more here than the younger actor. Nothing against him, but I just thought that this was good. I thought it was really, really well done. Also, I think that his wig looks better for some reason. Maybe it's because it's tied back, but it didn't bother me as much. And I like their dynamic. I like that Rhaenyra is still willing to play ball, but it's clear that it's starting to wear on her. Obviously, she's been bearing the brunt of the responsibility, and he's running off with his buddies, drinking it up, having a good time, wanting to get back to sea, and he doesn't realize that everything's about to come falling down. Kels says, I was fine with the time jump. The casting, it was great. Yes, and you are my compass for casuals. And I mean that in an endearing way. Jason Brubaker says, the time jump isn't a big deal. If people can't pay attention, then God bless their souls. Go watch Teletubbies or something. Well, I did see a lot of people, and by a lot, I mean like 2, say that they felt like the tone of the show changed with the actors and actresses changing. And to me, that makes total sense. Things are going to get really, really terrible very fast from season 2 on. We're going to be pretty much in a war zone. And I don't know what in the world people are going to do if they don't feel like there's enough hope right now, because it's not going to get any more hopeful. It's going to get very grim. I think the dance is much darker than A Song of Ice and Fire, like as a narrative. I think it's way, way more grim. And I've even said I feel like there's going to be stuff that I'm not sure that how they're going to put it on television. I really don't. They're going to have to get creative. Basaria has been the weak spot so far in the overall great series. They have only used her a little and with an odd accent, but maybe a bigger role later. Oh, it's funny because I actually felt like I said I think she's posed to have maybe the biggest changes from Fire and Blood, and that she would be the most interesting X factor. The accent thing, yeah, a little odd and a little cruddy, but I don't have a problem with her place in the story. And the fact that she wasn't pregnant, it kind of, I don't know, it's odd. Made me feel like she's going to be around a lot more, but we'll see. TK says, "Congrats, Jimmy. You finally bent the knee." You're right. You're right. Air says, as someone who hasn't read the book, I've still been invested so far. Viserys is such a fascinating character to me. He's become one of my favorite characters in all of Game of Thrones. Yeah, I've been pretty hesitant I've seen people say, I like this more in Game of Thrones, and I'm not on that train yet. And I don't think we necessarily, like, I don't know if that is even a question I'm going to ask myself at the end of this series. But what I can say, in the visual, like, screen adaptations of Westeros, Viserys has to be one of my favorite performances. Maybe even rivaling good old Bobby B back here. I'm sorry, I'm messing up my words. I just had Thai food. I had a long day at work, and I'm a little, like, frazzled. My fuses are a little sparked right now. But I just wanted to talk some House of the Dragon tonight, so I couldn't postpone it. There should be an initiation ritual for Jimmy on Bend the Knee, Jimmy of House Nuts, in the style of the final scene of episode 1, and have Prince that was promised playing the back. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll play with it a little bit. Yeah, Kels is a show only person, and she loves it. She literally was telling me before I went live, she's like, I just wish I would have been this age when Game of Thrones came on, because she tried it when she was younger. And she's like, I just, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for a show like that. And she's like, but God, I love House of the Dragon. And, like, looking forward to this every week is incredible. And I'm like, yeah, it's the best. It's like Christmas every Sunday at 9 p.m. for us. Turn off all the lights, get ready. It's fantastic. Emma Darcy identifies as a they, not a she. Yeah, I am not. I did not refer to Emma as a she. I'm referring to Rhaenyra as a she, and that is acceptable from what I saw from Emma. So, and if I did, I apologize, but I've been very careful with that, and I don't think I did. So. Chris Bookish Culture says, hell yeah, get rid of the hope. We want some gross grime of monarchy. So excited. Yeah, and, like, one of the things, I guess we can kind of jump into it a little bit here. I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to pace this episode, because I got a lot to say. But when it comes to some of the stickiness, we'll say, in the griminess of the show, and people are like, Daemon, they should have left in the Daemon hugging his wife or his kids scene after his wife died and all this stuff. I those are show decisions and narrative decisions, but, like, when I see people saying that this is too grim and that there's too many birth scenes and all this stuff, this is the problem with a monarchy and a succession line and heirs. Like, yes, it sucks. Like, yes, it's dirty, it's grimy, it's bad. That's the point. I think it shows everything that's wrong with the monarchy, and look how many seeds of evil this sows. And when it comes to the birthing scenes, because I've seen some people say, enough's enough, but it's interesting because and I can actually think of a friend who said they're kind of tired of seeing these birth scenes, and they're the same person who told me that they didn't like Kristen Cole's thing and they should have done another tourney, and they don't mind whenever there's multiple things in one season. But we kind of talked about why the Kristen Cole killing Joffrey wasn't a tourney, because you usually try not to do two things in one season, right? It's just an unwritten rule of television. Now, what I will say is they've went back on this with the childbirth thing, right? But it's just funny to me that people said, oh, I don't actually care about that, then are upset with multiple birth scenes. Lena's scene was rushed, in my opinion. So this is the gripe I have with this episode. I love this episode all the way up until this point. But I felt like I took a breath and it happened. And I think I even looked at my wife halfway through the episode and I was like, that was too quick. They rushed out a little bit. And it's crazy to me that I still actually felt a little bit of a lump in my throat with Lena dying. Lena's acting, like this actress, I don't know who she is. I thought she was fantastic. I thought that scene, even with it being rushed, I felt it. Gray Area, who's another wonderful creator, tweeted out today about how at the end it was not a command. There was no Dracarys. It was just her looking at her dragon in an unspoken thing, and then the dragon reluctantly giving her what she wanted. And I thought it was a really, really powerful scene. Gray Area loved it. And I did too. And this is where I think my criticism parts with most of other people's, because I know there's a lot of people who have an issue with the fact that Lena essentially commits suicide. And I think we're all aware that she wanted to die a dragon rider's death, and that she probably felt like it was more of a dragon rider's death not to die in her birth bed, but to die from her dragon, right? Now, in the book, she gives birth and then she's sick. It's like a fever and it takes a few days, and she tries to crawl out to Vhagar and she doesn't. They take her back to bed and then she dies, right? Kind of anticlimactic. It is what it is. So the show decided to go this route. And I think that there's a few reasons. And one of them is because it is it's a direct parallel to Viserys earlier in the season making the decision for Aemma. And in this scene, Daemon kind of shakes his head. I saw some people say they didn't feel like he said no. To me, that was a no. Like, you cannot perform the C-section. And Lena knows this. And she knows she's going to die. So in that moment, she takes the agency to make that decision. And that will hit you in whatever way it hits you, because that is a very sensitive subject when it comes to, I guess we call it assisted suicide at this point, right? But to me, the importance of that scene, whether or not you like the fact that she makes that decision, is the fact that it shows her agency, and it also shows a direct contrast to what we saw earlier in the season, especially Daemon. And I saw some people were upset that the scene of Daemon hugging his kids after her death was cut, and I understand. And I have a bigger issue with it now that I know that HBO is the one that tweeted. I thought it was like leaked photos. It was just HBO tweeting it out, which I don't love, because, HBO, you cut it. So you shouldn't include it after. Like, I feel like you're trying to like throw it in the pot because you feel like maybe they know that they rushed the scene a little bit. Like maybe Miguel was like, hey, tweet that out. You know what I'm saying? But to me, I like it. I like it less that it was leaked by HBO themselves. I think that's kind of annoying because like you made a decision to cut it, so it is what it is. But I think that in that moment of him basically not like shaking his head, it shows that Daemon like had feelings for Helena, even though it's not his most desired partner. They obviously have chemistry. They obviously have a connection, but like it's not what he truly wants. And we see Lena even say that to Daemon, you're better than this. Like, you're worth more than this. You want more than this. You're destined for more. So I felt their connection, even though it was a little bit rushed. I think it would have been great to have another episode of them. Like maybe if they could have staggered the timelines just a little bit. But I think the symbolism of her going out and making the decision works for me. And some people say, well, why would she do that? Like she should be thinking of her, like, her motherly nature. And it's like, she was a dragon rider first. To me, that's what I get from Lena's character. And she was going to die, by the way. Like, I don't know if that's clear, but like she was going to die no matter what. And the baby was also going to die. The baby most likely had already suffocated at that point. Very good chance. If you look at C-sections within medieval times, right? If they do the C-section, try to put things back in, like there's just no way. She'd get an infection. The baby's most likely going to die. So it wasn't like she chose to kill her baby. Like, I don't think the baby would have made it anyways, personally. So I saw people saying like, why would she choose to die? There was still a chance. I don't think there was. That's how I kind of interpreted it. But I like the fact that she was given agency in her last moments. But with that said, the whole thing was too rushed. Maybe wish they would have staggered it, but also, what the hell do I know? I'm a small-time YouTuber. So that's just how I felt, though. I felt like it was a little bit rushed. And when I got that, I almost felt like they could have extended that out just a bit. But whenever we also get Harrenhal in this episode, I was like, like I was really looking forward to Harrenhal, especially because Harwin on the screen. Everybody loved Harwin. Breakbones was fantastic in this episode. And like I said, I felt a connection with the kids, even though like it isn't acknowledged by him really. Thought the chemistry with Rhaenyra was fantastic. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of wish it would have been built up a little bit more. But that is me as a viewer picking what I thought was important and what I thought was worth taking time with. And Miguel kind of talked about this, and he's like, I know people would want to take a walk down the hall with these characters and maybe take 10 minutes to see what they're going to eat that day. He's like, but unfortunately, with the timeline and where we're trying to get, we do not have that. And we had to try to make the most of screen time. So for better or for worse, for the pace that they've chose and what they're deciding to focus on, that we didn't get those things. But I did feel like Lena dying and then doing Harrenhal. I was so shocked they did Harrenhal this episode. I wish it would have been a little bit bigger. And if we could have had more time, but we don't. So overall, I thought the Harrenhal scene was like really, really good. And I also really, really like Laris. Like Laris is the most interesting character coming out of this episode, without a doubt. And we don't know all of his motivations. Like he killed his family. You know what I mean? Like he did that and he made it seem like such a logical decision. Well, that is what the queen wants, and I am the queen's servant, so that's what she gets. And it's like, ugh, like there actually are people in the world that operate like that, and it is horrifying. And obviously he's turned up to 100 because, you know, it's television, it's drama, and it needs to be. So I just found that to be chilling. The voiceover at the end was absolutely amazing. I loved it. I thought Alicent realizing what she had done and clutching her throat was a really, really solid scene. And then also like just the small things of like the cutting out of the tongues, right? And pending the bees on the chest. Just really, really good stuff. And also this dude just has a creepy, no offense to the actor. He's got the creep look down. All right. So talking about Daemon, Robert Crump says, yeah, he shaked his hand. I really love it as a subtle touch that shows for all his faults, he is not his brother. Yes. And on top of this, like, I know we wish we could see more of like lovable Daemon. There's two sides to that. So one, I do believe that more of his nuance is coming. So like the larger picture, they may have thought that the hugging of the kids exposed too much of it too early. Like they want that to come in a different time, make it a bigger moment later. And also, like, as the viewer, we're all like cheering on Daemon. Like Daemon and Matt Smith's doing a fantastic job, in my opinion. And people want to like Daemon. It's like Jaime Lannister. It's like people will excuse him shoving Bran out of a window because they want to love him because he's lovable. He's very charismatic. And Daemon is the same way. But like we do have to realize that Daemon did murder an innocent woman to get out of a marriage. And we had a 10-year time jump. But still, he murdered an innocent woman to get out of his marriage. So how much of that is on us because we're like, well, we needed that scene because we want to love Daemon. And it's like, well, maybe you're not supposed to love Daemon. Or at least not yet. I don't know. I think it almost says more about the viewers, right? Yeah, it was the only thing to let us know his feelings for Helena. I did think that their dueling dragon riding and like it seemed like whenever they were being wild and spontaneous on the dragons, that is whenever they really seemed to have that connection. And I think that Helena was trying to bring that out of Daemon in their conversation whenever she said, you know, I'm not trying to sit around and just gain weight and be still. I want to move. I want to go do things. And I want to go back and see my brother. And I know what you want to see your brother too, which was a really, really great line. So. Yeah, I think the show kept Damon's reaction to the question vague so that the outcome was purely Lena's choice. Yeah, it kind of passes to her. And Jason said in the chat, I did think like Lena just getting out of bed, no one noticing, and like getting out to the dragon. Like, why couldn't we have like cut to the bed and she's gone, go to a different scene real quick? You know what I mean? Like maybe we could have broke that up. But the fact that it was all done at once made it feel like it just happened so fast. Crazy how Harwin meant nothing to me in the book, and the show got me to like him in an episode. And yeah, Philip, this is kind of what I'm saying. Like, I know it's really fast, and I know we're only getting so much time with these characters. And like, trust me, I loved Harwin, but like, you have to realize in the book, like, it's even less. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there might be a few more words or whatever, but like we got more from him than ever before. And I think that is the point. And even in Fire and Blood, this prelude to the dance is much shorter page count wise than what we're going to get when it comes to the wars. So I think they were trying to appropriate like the ratios of that and like, well, how much screen time do we give to Harwin at all? They could have done something totally different and made the kid somebody else. You know what I mean? So they're trying to stay loyal to the book, maybe even to a fault at some point. Yeah, that's the beauty of this show. Interesting how people read the head shake in different ways. Yeah, right. And that is one thing the show has been very successful on is the subtleties and interpretation and what you take as, fact and what you take as BS. I think the show's done a really nice job of that. And that keeps the spirit of the books for sure. Shake says, I think doing Harrenhal in the same episode took away a bit from Lena's scene. That is an episode ending scene, in my opinion. It felt weird to have so much more after. The monologue at the end was awesome, though. Yeah, it felt jarring that we were moving on to something else, especially like whenever I saw that they were going into Harrenhal. I'm like, oh, they're gonna burn it now. They're burning it now. Wow, this is crazy. In the books, it's kind of hinted at. I don't think it's even necessarily like validated in any way, but there's a somewhat of a theory that Daemon was the one to burn Harrenhal because Lena had died and he wanted to get with Rhaenyra. So the show has dispelled that, and I think some people were disappointed by that, but I wasn't. I like this angle a little bit more. Also, whenever there's a murder, it's almost always someone like you know what I mean? And Harwin knows Daemon, but Harwin knows Laris more. So that's funny. Someone said that Lena was too busy to notice the head nod either way. Harwin's death somewhat bewildered me. I was like, how did assassins get in the castle and get out having killed him? Yeah, it takes a little bit of suspension of belief there, I think. But also, like, Harrenhal's massive and, like, also kind of, like, corroded and messed up. So it's not exactly, like, the most closed down castle. And, like, people don't visit there that often. So you could take that in two ways, right? You could take it as, like, they could slip in because no one's really paying attention. Or you could say, well, wouldn't the assassins stick out like a sore thumb? But that's not a detail that I really find myself being hooked up on. Yeah, a lot of people I've seen said the actor for Laris would be perfect. Glotka from First Law, I totally agree, but now you can't cast him as that because people just call him Laris. Yeah, the little fireflies, which I thought were bees. I think I said bees. I'm sorry, but yeah, fireflies. Yeah. I like how Clubfoot, who's basically Littlefinger of the show, just inherited Harrenhal just like Littlefinger. Yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that he is then the inheritor of Harrenhal, right? Really good detail, Matt. I like that a lot. I also just love seeing the history of Harrenhal's curse being like brought to life on screen. So now whenever you read A Song of Ice and Fire or you're, watching Game of Thrones, like Harrenhal has even more backstory now that you've like visually seen, not just read about. So it's pretty cool. I wonder if it was the show thing to help audience with connecting them, or if it was from the books was like the symbol of a group I didn't know about. No, that is a show thing. That is a show only thing. Unless if I'm mistaken, but I don't think I am. Yeah, a lot of people are on about Laris's actor playing Glotka for sure. Jason says the Harrenhal scene was really good, but yeah, I wish we had gotten 2 episodes instead of 1. Also, I think the show could have benefited from an extra episode post the wedding disaster. Yeah, you could argue that where they left off for the 10-year time jump, like I think that you could look at that now and say maybe it wasn't the best case. But we're saying, oh, maybe 1 extra episode, maybe 2 or 3 extra episodes, but now you're getting into season 2 because they're not going to give them 11, 12, 13 episodes for this. Now, if this is season 4 and this is doing 25 million all the way through every week, then yeah, they'll give them that. But for this specifically, especially during the merger time, I don't think that they were going to get. I don't think they were going to get granted any extra money, unfortunately, especially with all the business stuff going on behind the scenes at Discovery and Warner. So, but yeah, I mean, in theory, yeah, I think this easily could have been 2 episodes. You could have made it all about Lena, then the next episode, do the funeral while going into the Harrenhal stuff. Like, you could have done a little bit more with it, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, there seems to be time constraints, which is a little disappointing. Harrenhal was shown to be a really strong as a fortress in the past, so the ease on screen of their killing of Harwin Strong as they seem to get in and out without explanation. Yeah, but I mean, Harrenhal's not what it once was at all. I mean, it was burnt from above, essentially abandoned for a time. So, like, I don't necessarily think it's what it once was at this point in the narrative at all. Now, back in the day, right before Aegon did his deal, yeah. But I mean, either way, I mean, I'm not going to defend the fact that the assassin slipped in. I guess I just don't care. Like, it's a convenience that I'm willing to accept. Laris definitely solidified himself, though, with that monologue. I almost wanted to say it to my parents. Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, Laris knows Harrenhal pretty well. He probably could have gave solid instruction to his assassins. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We had other scenes that got cut. I don't think they were going to take an extra 5 minutes to explain Harrenhal secret passages. I don't think that this is. I mean, everyone has their things, but I don't think it's something to be too concerned about. Kel says it was fast, but I was okay with both death scenes. It showed both Damon and Rhaenyra's trauma at the same time. That, from a non-book view, opened the opportunity to drive them together more intensely. That's a really good point, and it is something that I think that kind of gets lost somewhat. Is the fact that this show is about Rhaenyra, Daemon, Alicent, Kristen Cole. Throw out a Hightower, but those 4 are really at the heart of what they're trying to do, and I think it's pretty clear from what they're focusing on. Now, there are a ton of other characters, and the kids are going to play a major role, but like, those people throughout will continue to be very, very important. So I think the fact that we're going to see the trauma and the bonding of this, and man, Kels, that's a really good point, and this is why I also feel like I've been very forgiving on certain things, because I say, let's see the whole picture. Like, for instance, like, people being upset that like Damon didn't hug his kids in the scene in the show. It's like, well, like, let's just see where they go, because there might be a better moment later and they didn't want to undercut it. So it's really hard to judge this show without every episode. And this is like a byproduct of the week-to-week release, which I heavily prefer. I do not like the binge releases of shows. I think it ruins water cooler talk. This is so much fun. I mean, I hope you're having fun. I have fun doing these, even whenever we go off on tangents, or maybe the chat doesn't agree with me totally. This is still like a ton of fun. And you lose that with the binge, but also with the week to week. I think the ability, or maybe I should say the temptation to fall into hyperbole of whether this episode is tanking the show or making the show it's great. That temptation's great. So I think if I take a step back and I say, okay, we have more narrative to go, I think I can see these things. And honestly, Kels, this is a fantastic point. And I think that next episode, when we see some stuff based on the stills that I saw, I think I know what's coming. This juxtaposition is very, very important, of Daemon and Rhaenyra both losing someone. Now, for Daemon, it's a little different, because I think Daemon has always wanted to be with Rhaenyra. So it definitely is going to link them in some way, right? Great point. Great point. I'm getting caught up here. There's so many good comments. I like reading them all. Philip says, us House of the Dragon addicts, just give me one more episode this season. Just one more. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think by doing one episode post the wedding murder, you allow more time to develop the Alicent and Kristen relationship, and the show could have further developed Cole's bitterness towards Rhaenyra. Yeah, so Cole's really I mean, called her, see you next Tuesday. I was like, oh my goodness. I think his allegiance to Alicent is fine, because like, she literally basically saves his life right at the end. So I can take the leap of faith to say that they've grown very close in that. And he's a very loyal person. Like, that's one of his scruples, and makes him a great character for good and bad reasons. But his bitterness, I mean, he came across like a total dick. And I know some people who were really enjoying like sympathetic moments with Kristen Cole and also with Alicent. felt like now we're 10 years later and Alicent's much more hateable. She's easier to get it to dislike, but lines are going to be drawn in the sand. And with 10 years, I mean, she decided to start playing the Game of Thrones 10 years ago. And in that 10 years, it only makes sense that she's become more brazen to me, because if she wasn't and she didn't stick to her guns and play the Game of Thrones properly in those 10 years, she wouldn't be there anymore, whether she'd be dead or dislodged, whatever it might be. And she's at bat because she feels like she is doing the right thing for the realm as well. So Otto has really put that in her head. Also, seeing her like she's about to get Otto back, really, really cool. Wouldn't be here if it wasn't fun. Really looking forward to episode 7, but not going to lie, a bit worried due to the pacing issues. I think there's another time jump at the episode 7. After that, we should settle down, though. Yeah, I believe after that, I think it's pretty much, I mean, unless the time jumps like maybe 6 months or something, like I don't think we'll notice any time jumps from I'm going to say season 2, just because I don't know when the next one's coming. But it's still not like a time jump where it's like, oh, another Rhaenyra. Now the kids are going to get aged up, and we know that, right? But I'm not worried, man. I think if they got through the 10-year time jump, anything can work. Viewership was up 3% this week, which it was up 5% last week. So week over week, we're gaining like 2, 3, 5%. That's incredible. That's good news for future seasons. Clearly, they've already greenlit season 2. But I do think next week is the real indicator. If we see a drop off, even if it's modest, you're going to find out that, hey, that time jump did not work for a lot of people. I'll be honest, I kind of expect it to drop a little bit. With that said, if it goes on and it gets good, and everyone's talking about it still, those people might come back. But my prediction is that the time jump will be a little bit jarring for some of the casuals. Also, I got to tell, Kay, thank you so much for the 5 spot. That is very, very kind of you and very generous. Kay says the ending monologue was great. It's the most cynical, effed up take on having children. Really displays who and what we're dealing with now. That's right. It is a tone setter. That's what this episode was. Ends in 2 tragic deaths, and one not really being that person's fault, taking the decision in their own hands to end their life. And then on the other side, it is, murder of a family member. If that doesn't set the tone for the Dance of Dragons, I don't know what else does. It's going to get really, really grim. Thank you, Kay, for the 5 spot. I appreciate that very much. And I want to talk about the pacing a little bit, because like I told you guys, I think it's rushed. I see some people saying, yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Some people say, I'm a little worried. Like Shake said, he's worried. This is the craziest thing. Like doing Bend the Knee, I see just such a totally different audience. I see a lot of just show watchers. You would be shocked when I tell you this, that I see dozens and dozens of comments in the chat when we do those live reactions. There are people who think this show is too slow. What do you make of that? And it's not like 1 or 2. Like I'm talking about dozens upon dozens of people and casual people. And like I read other things, because I follow people on social media that aren't into our fandoms or anything, and they're just generic people, usually just tweet about like food and sports. And they're even like, yeah, man, it like good show's good, but like it needs to pick it up. And I'm over here just like, what are you talking about? This is crazy. Like that is a legitimate gripe that some of the more casual viewers have had. And I can't stress enough that it's not 1 or 2. Like there's a decent amount of people I've seen say this. Like, when is this thing going to kick into high gear? And I'm just like floored, I would love to hear chat. I would love to hear like y'all's take on that. What I will say is that I believe that season 2 is going to be more methodical, but it's going to have more battles. Like it's going to be all out war for 3 seasons. They're going to have to find a way of like interjecting and sprinkling in some of these moments that we've actually had, like Rhaenyra and Harwin's little conversations. Like they're going to have to try to find a way to sprinkle that in for all the madness that's about to come. So my question is like, are the casual people going to be more appeased because of like the high budget battles and like gruesome action scenes? Or are they going to be upset that like it is not time jumping? Do you know what I mean? It's very strange. Derry says, oh my God, I just realized how long we have to wait for season 2. Yeah, it'll probably be almost 2 years, if I had to guess. Rupert Crump says the actor playing Cole Fabian Franco has done a great job as he is in the entire show and wasn't changed actor wise, but managed to play almost two completely different characters. Yeah, absolutely. The evolution of Alicent and Viserys' relationship was really interesting. Her being on the council, it almost felt like she was in charge, not Viserys. Yeah, and that is no doubt the intention of those scenes. And her outrightly defying him, the sit down command at the council over my dead body on the stairs. Like, even I, like, whenever she was going up the stairs, she turned around and yelled at him in front of everybody. I was like, whoa, easy. Like, I know he's weak, but come on. Also, I do think they set it up like Viserys is almost like on death's door at the end of episode 5, and to see him alive 10 years later, he looks terrible, by the way. He looks like Dan Aykroyd from Nothing But Trouble. Google it. It's a great movie. Well, it's actually one of the worst received movies of all time, but I love it. It's really weird. He kind of looks like that. Or, the Crypt Keep. He looks terrible, is the point. I think that the justification for him still being alive is that they finally cut off the arm. I don't know if you could tell. It was like loose. I'm assuming they finally cut it off, and now, like, he's just aged because, one, he was fighting the infection for so long, and then two, he's just getting old. But yeah, I don't know. They went real hard on making him seem like he was going to die, which I think was their justification to rush the wedding that night, because Viserys probably tried to freaked out a little bit. Like, I need to shore this up now, which I talked about last week. But yeah, it is a little weird that he's alive 10 years later with how bad they showed him off at the end of episode 5. Yes. Yeah, the dynamic between Alicent and Otto, now that she is a player of the game, she's done pretty good. And you wonder if, like, is Otto still bitter? You know what I mean? Like, is he going to be super bitter whenever he finally sees her again at court? I think there's probably a pretty good chance. But I thought Olivia Cook did a really nice job this episode. And both deaths at the end of this episode by fire. Can we talk about how majestic Vhagar was? Not just in that scene, but flying. Digging it. I disagree. I enjoy what's happening so far. It appears almost every scene has purpose. Yeah. Overall, I think the pacing is fine as long as they take their time to truly focus on the actual events of the dance. And they're all signs point towards the fact that they are. Unless if they come out and say, yeah, season 2, we're going to wrap it up, then I would be like, wait, what? Even 3 seasons, I would be like, okay, we're cutting some stuff or just going to glance over it. 4 or 5 is a sweet spot. I think 5 is actually doable because I think that they're going to expand out a little bit, and you could really add stuff. You could do some stuff with the free cities. Like, I don't know. You could definitely expand the story a little bit out of canon, and I think it could be cool. So we'll see. Shake says, yeah, I know. I find it a bit weird, but I get it from a non-hardcore fan perspective. We're talking, and I assume all these are talking about the pace and people saying stuff's not happening as fast as I thought it would. Generation Adderall, no attention span anymore. Shake says, I just love spending time with these characters, but I have some friends who don't care about all the small one-to-one scenes. Yeah. I mean, I still to this day think episode 4 was the best episode of House of the Dragon. And I saw more people say that that was too slow of an episode than any other one. Which I don't know. I like dialogue. I like the small council scenes. Those are the ones that really live with me more so than the Battle of the Bastards and those other things. I mean, Blackwater Bay is my favorite battle of all time on screen, even more than Helm's Deep. But I still prefer, like, Tyrion talking to his dad. I just do. I don't know what's wrong with me. I wonder if the Nothing is Happening crowd are familiar with this level of complexity that needs to be many pieces up to attention. Yeah, to be clear, like, these people are not saying that they're upset with the show. Like, they're enjoying it. They're just like, it's good, but, like, come on, when's the real stuff start happening? Which in a way is kind of good because, like, we all think it's being rushed a little bit, but, like, the real stuff's coming. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like they can kind of see past this prologue and they're like, yeah, but, like, the big stuff's coming with the dragons later, right? And the answer is yeah, it is. So in a way, it's almost good because they're ready to get through this so they can see the stuff that they were expecting. Whereas we are like, man, this stuff's really good. You could have done this for 24 episodes. Just a different perspective on this, right? Crump says, I'm interested as a casual fan to see if people like me who don't know the book that feel it's rushed now, or even those who think slow will feel that way by the end of the show on a rewatch. Yeah, I think that this season, when we go back, assuming quality, when we go back after season 3 or 4, whatever it is, and we go watch season 1, we're going to be so impressed with how much they managed to set up, because there are things in season 1 that are going to be referred just like in the books, right? When we go back, we go, oh my God, George said that in book 1. That's crazy. And then it shows up in book 5. That's going to happen in the show. There's stuff here that has been just sprinkled in that we will come back to, and we're going to go, wow, what an attention to detail. And Condell being involved with the show and being such a loyalist to George and the source material and the spirit of A Song of Ice and Fire is why this is happening. So it's very, very cool. It's one of the reasons why once D&D started taking over the writing over what George had already or had not written yet and weren't really taking his advice anymore, you saw a lot less of those breadcrumbs and a lot less of the subtleties. So even though the show is extremely on the nose when it comes to certain things, I think that there's still enough subtlety there to have a ton of rewatch value and a lot of good quality work done. The one thing I was really shocked about is how on the nose it was that these kids were Harwins, that Rhaenyra's kids were Harwins. Like, if you missed that, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it was so on the nose. But I think the reason why it was so on the nose is because they want you to feel the tension that, like, this is super obvious. And, like, Allison's blowing up the spot. Like, she's finally had enough. At 3 kids, she's like, no. Like, my kids are so far down the succession line. This is bullshit. So, I think it makes sense that it was so on the nose, but I don't know. That was one of the things I was surprised. I'm surprised you'd think the casual fan would be all right with the pace of the show if they've watched Game of Thrones. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I said, because it's like season 1 of Game of Thrones is extremely slow. I love it. It's awesome. One of the best seasons, but very, very slow. But the amount of people I see come in and just say, yeah, man, like, this show's got to get a move on. Like, what in the world? Well, Stephanie says, how did they get through Game of Thrones? It's much slower. Well, the answer is that they didn't like the show until season 7. Because season 7's just as bad as season 8, but people didn't care because, like, it's the hype train, right? But if you go back and watch, and I think there's more to like about season 7 and 8 than most people give it credit for. I'm not saying I liked it, but, like, I'm not like the 100% pure hatred, swear everything off kind of person. But season 7 was pretty bad. But a lot of people jumped on the train in season 7. So I think you can kind of tell, right? Also, I think some people forget. People forget how much of a leash they had with the other show, right? Yeah, people binging. Yep. Right. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. Game of Thrones is a lot slower than House of the Dragon, so I'm utterly perplexed by the complaints. But yeah, and you know, these people overall were pretty positive. I mean, they're coming to watch a Bend the Knee stream, so, like, you know, they're trying to interact and talk about the show. Now, we did have a couple people. Woo! They came in and they were like, "What?" Like, they didn't know there was a time jump, so they got on the internet furious. Like, what the hell is what? They took away my Rhaenyra, and it wasn't good. Like, they were swearing, saying these new actresses were terrible and the show sucks. How did they waste this much money to switch the cast? They're an idiot, you know. Which I do understand. Like, if you didn't know that, like, we all knew the time jump was coming, right? Because we've been talking about it week after week after week. We watched David Lightbring, watch Alt Shift X, we watched all these people talking about it. But I had a couple of guys at the jiu-jitsu gym, and they're like, yeah, I didn't even know there's time jump coming. Now, they were cool with it. They said they missed the younger actors and actresses, but they said, I'm fine with it. The story's dope. And they loved the ending. They loved Lena. They loved, like, you know what I mean? The experience is all over the board. I think the one thing that most people can see is that this is a really good television show. And when we're talking about the pacing and everything, I would just like to point that there's another fantasy show on television right now that is going the very methodical way, and it's not going so well. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad show. I'm just saying that the reception of it is much different. Much different. So it could always be worse. Okay, thank you again for the 5 spots. Very, very kind. People need to elaborate when they complain about pacing. Is it because there's minimal action so far and more dialogue? That's not a bad thing. I think there's a lot of people out there who are switching off the Masked Singer and coming to House of the Dragon because they really want to see some damn dragons. I think that's what it is. I think they're also, like, they've been building the Civil War for like 6 episodes. I think people want it to pop off, which the end of the season is going to be dope. And I think that is going to be the big selling point. I think episode 9 and 10 have to like be home runs. I mean, they don't have to be like they're going to get season 2, but like if we want this to be like capturing the zeitgeist again, I think seasons 9 episodes 9 and 10 have to be absolute blockbusters. Or at least one of them, and then deal with the fall in the others, because like we all know that episode 9 in the Game of Thrones universe is really the climax, with like 10 being the hook for the next season usually. So I'll be very curious. The lady who directed episode 4 is doing episode 9, which I think bodes very well, because in my opinion episode 4 was the best. So I'm really, really excited about that. Also, pacing is such a weird topic. I really I think it's like one of the hardest things to judge, especially because, like, I talk about books most of the time, like book pacing. Like, are you talking about chapters? Are you talking about the book? Are you talking about a series? Like, there's different types of pacing, right? So even in episodes, right, we have episode pacing, we have season pacing, we have arc pacing. There's so many different things at different levels that you have to think about. So I think this was the first episode though where I felt the jarriness. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt as soon as Lena died, and I got over the fact that I was actually kind of emotional because the acting was so good, that I said, that was a little too fast. It's a little too fast, right? I'm more worried that they're hyping up all the battles, etc. Like, I've been rereading Fire and Blood, and while there's fights and battles here and there's not that many in my opinion. I think it's the prolonged amount of battles, and like that they will be in a state of war for a really long time, and we'll probably see some of the more smaller skirmishes as well. But I think they'll deliver when it comes time to get down to business. I think they'll do a good job. Now, will they abide by all the people who like know exactly how far an arrow is supposed to go, and if you can not hit somebody or not? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, they might not like it, but I'll like it probably. Helm's Deep is good. It's no Blackwater Bay, but it's good. God, this show is going to be expensive with 2 battles per season full of men and dragon riders. Yeah, it's going to get pricey. But I'm telling you, if HBO's looking at this right now, licking their lips, and they're like, this is a hit. You know what I think my favorite part of the episode was, though? If I could be honest, I think it was this guy right here. Dude, this is David Tennant's son, right? Dude, Aegon is so good. This actor is such a shit. He got me. And then, obviously he heard the bells ringing, and he went a different type of crazy out on the windowsill. And I laughed so hard at that scene. That was so ridiculous. Hey, who hasn't? You know what I'm saying? Like, who hasn't? But I thought all the scenes in featuring Aegon with the other kids was absolutely awesome. I like the interactions between the strong boys. I mean, Rhaenyra's boys, and Allison's kids. I thought they were solid. The bullying, Pink Dread, all that stuff. If I had to pick like the biggest surprise, it was the fact that this actor right here in Aegon the second was fantastic. Really, really good. They're gonna age Aegon up, right? Is that right? This actor is not going to be around. Can someone confirm that for me in the chat? I actually don't know, because I didn't look at the casting call. Like, I know that they eventually announce it. Is Aegon the second going to be aged up? Because I want this actor to stay. I love him. I said earlier I don't get attached to actors. I'm attached to this guy. Aemond is going to be sick. That's the one to keep an eye on. Robert Krupp says, question, how come all of Rhaenyra's children don't have the white hair, but Alicent's all do, even though the amount of dragon blood is the same in each at 50%? Because the seed is strong. I don't know. It's fantasy. I don't know. Is it a book or show thing? I don't remember I know that like it's kind of obvious that they're strongs, but I don't remember their hair color. So yeah, I like this. Shake says, A Song of Ice and Fire genetics work the way the plot needs them to work. Yeah. They don't really make sense. It's true. Okay, here's confirmation. Shake, it matches the books, though, and I think it just reinforces how modern Gen X clearly was not available for Westeros. Yeah, for sure. The Bee's Niece says, my mom is watching The Masked Singer right now. Well, hey, I hope it's a great season. I hope it's a great season. Gurm is pretty lax with genetics in the books as well as horses. He messed up horses as well throughout the books, which is pretty funny. I like this. The Bee's Knee says the only other franchise I can think that brings out as much emotion for people is the MCU, and maybe that's just the people I talk to a lot. I mean, no, I mean they're commercial successes and thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours of content made on them. There's stuff to dig into there, and yeah, it's fun to talk about this stuff. Like even when I disagree with people, for the most part, as long as people approach it from a respectful stance, like I enjoy it. Like there's a lot of people who don't like the Lena death scene with the Dracarys and the dragon, like, but I do. Like Vagar, like her burning Lena. I don't know. It got me. It got me. I think it's because of the agency in the scene. Is this stream including book spoilers? Not any book spoilers past episode 6, so I'm not ruining anything in the future. But if it's happened in Fire and Blood to this point, I may point out that it was a little bit different. But even then, we haven't really been spoiling any book stuff, so you're good. Mitch says praying for non-violent resolutions. I think that those. I don't think there's a chance. That train is left town. My goodness. Aegon stole the show. Hate the guy. Oh, I thought the actor was awesome. Yeah, it's David Tennant's son. Yeah. And it looks like we will be losing this actor. Well, that's a shame. He did a great job. I hope the best for him. And you know, I hope the older Aegon can fill these boots or fill the window. Hey, Mark, thank you. You said I subscribe and thumbs up. You're a pro. Are you on every Wednesday? Cheers. So I do this stream either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and I'll be doing it for as long as the season rolls on. I'm also a co-host on a Song of Ice and Fire podcast that covers the show, and that is Bend the Knee here on YouTube. And there's also a subscription feed for a podcast to that. So feel free to check it out. But yeah, I'll be live here every week as the show goes on, and then next season and everything else. So definitely am appreciative that you subscribe and thumbs up. It means a lot. Keeps me rolling, guys. Keeps me rolling. Yeah, all the kids are recasted. Okay, that's cool. That's fine. Not a problem then. I have trust in this casting. I think the casting's fantastic. So the older ones might even be better. I'm just never going to forget the window scene ever. It's not a horse size thing. It's more of the parts the horse has, if you know what I'm saying. Gurm looked deep down into society's mouth and delivered. Fantastic R. Scott Baker reference. Fantastic. All right, so let me look and make sure that I don't have any of the other notes. I am going to put up a picture, and I want you all to either put a thumbs up emoji or a thumbs down emoji for how you feel about this character. If you like them or you hate them, okay? So thumbs up if you like them, thumbs down if you don't. I got to find the picture first. Can I find the picture? Right here. It's the main one staring at you. Thumbs up in the chat if you like them. Thumbs down in the chat if you hate him. I feel like I know which way this is going to go, but I gotta. It's democracy. I gotta figure out. Are we with Sir Crispy Cole still or no? And as I wait for the votes to roll in, I'm just making sure that I didn't miss anything. Oh, I did miss one thing. Okay, Crispy Cole's getting a lot of hate. Strictly the character, Shake. Strictly the character. Thumbs up or thumbs down? I'm seeing a lot of thumbs down. I was just curious if there was anybody left on the train for old Crispy, because like I saw people being like, he didn't murder a man, but I understand like what happened. Oh, Bee's Knees, it's very nice. Thank you for supporting the channel. It means a lot. This is a fish, Matt. I don't know what that means. Okay, so we don't like Crispy Cole. I had to make sure. I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page, because at the end of the last episode, even after he murdered some people, I see his side, he's just trying to do the right thing. Turns out not so good, right? Not so good for El Crispy Cole. Definitely a little bit more staunch with his beliefs now. He's r/nice guys. Yeah, good one. So there is one last thing that I really wanted to talk about, unless if I remember something else. And that is, and I think I have a picture of this character to pull up, and I do. Guys, Helena. Let's talk about this. So this is a character in Fire and Blood that does not have much to do. Very minor, at least from everything I can remember, and I'll probably be wrong when I do my reread a little bit further up. But Helena is a dreamer. And I'm not going to spoil anything, and I don't want you to spoil in the chat, but you should pay very close attention to everything this girl says in this show. Because even this episode, she was saying things that matter a whole bunch. And the fact that they're leaning into Bug Girl, the Bug Girl, the Bug Girl to me is someone that is a dreamer. And I definitely feel like we should pay attention. So if you have not read Fire and Blood, just pay attention, because I think she's going to be one of those things that we go back and we watch in season 1 and we go, wow, look at some of the stuff that they were setting up. So I'm pumped for Helena's role in the story. I hope she gets a little bit more to do. Like I said, in Fire and Blood, she is not as prominent of a character, but it seems like here she's at least going to have a more interesting role. So pretty hype. Yeah, keep an eye out for sure. Keep an eye out for this one. Helena. Yeah, that was one of the coolest changes from the book that got me excited. That also goes with some of the stuff they set up earlier in season 1. So, I think it was Rupert Crump in the chat was saying, when we go, I wonder how this season will feel when we go back and watch it. And I think it's like little things like this, they're going to make this season really dope, because there's times where we have this like little slow 30-second scene with Helena that is going to like be such a cool moment later, like foreshadowing and whatnot, and while still setting up and getting through all of this prelude. So guys, I'm excited about this show. I came out of this one feeling a little bit more mixed than the other ones, but I still really, really liked it a lot. Still better than any of the other television I'm watching recently. But I was kind of like, oh, I got to sleep on a little bit. And seeing some of the people saying they didn't like the time jump, yada, 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 but it's exciting still. And like, there's even more stuff to be excited about now because the cast is expanding. The kids are going to be cool. And this is hype. Like, we're going into the finale, like the final weeks of this season. And you're only going to get to experience this once. And the fact that we get to come here weekly and talk about it is excellent. And I love it. And it's definitely been the highlight of my week recently. It's Christmas every single Sunday when I get to watch House of the Dragon. And it's also Christmas when I get to come on here and talk to y'all about how big of a bastard Laris is. So yeah, I think that about covers it. I know I didn't cover every little detail of the show this week, but I wanted to kind of go over maybe some of the criticisms. And I also, I wanted to see what y'all thought. I wanted to see your perspective. I also try to see things from another perspective too, from a whole show type view, a little bit of a bird's eye view. So pretty awesome. I don't think there's any outstanding things in the chat. So I think that will do it. I want to thank y'all for being here so much. Like, this is awesome. The fact that I'm getting to do this, I never got to do this whenever Game of Thrones is out. So this is pretty amazing as a big Song of Ice and Fire fan. Go check me out on the Bend the Knee podcast. Starting this Sunday, I will be one of the official co-hosts. So go check out Bend the Knee, please, to see all of my like raw reactions directly after the episode. I'm still going to be doing these, and nothing's going to change with the channel. I'm just taking on some more amazing responsibilities. So thank you so much. Hit like on this. It helps people find it after the fact. Hopefully the images and stuff make it a little bit more entertaining for the people who aren't here live. And we will be back next week. And I will also be live this Friday for another episode of Chatting with Nuts. My guest will be Andy Smith, and I will announce and post that tomorrow. And that will be this Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. I love talking to Andy. He's a big Malazan fan, biggest Song of Ice and Fire fan. So we're going to have plenty to talk about, and I'd love to have you there for that great conversation. But with all that said, until I see you next time, be good, be safe, and remember to always keep turning the page.